41 of the nation's smartest new college graduates are at Brown University this summer for an entrepreneurial boot camp. They're the first class of fellows in Venture for America, which hopes to do for startups what Teach for America did for schools. It's launching in Providence and 4 other cities, and it's already winning praise from President Obama. Our guest on the first half of Executive Suite, Venture for America founder Andrew Yang. Plus, shockwaves from Wall Street to London after a top bank admits it fixed interest rates. How one local academic sounded the alarm. Joining us for the second half, Providence College professor Michael Kraten. Welcome to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi. Andrew, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Ted.
So let's just start off with the most basic question. What is Venture for America?
Venture for America is a new national nonprofit that recruits and trains top college graduates who want to, at some point, start and found their own businesses. What we do is we match those recent graduates with existing businesses, existing startups and entrepreneurs, so that they have a couple of years to develop before they start businesses of their own.
So I mentioned the Teach for America comparison at the top. You hear that a lot when people are writing about you, putting these in almost underprivileged cities, the way those are students put into underprivileged schools. Providence is one of the first cities you chose. How are you choosing which cities to start these folks off in?
Well, honestly, we came to Providence in part because of my personal connection here. I graduated from Brown back in '96. And Venture for America was partially inspired by Charlie Kroll, an entrepreneur here in Providence who also graduated from Brown.
Charlie runs Andera, people might recognize at home, the financial services tech firm.
Yeah, and Charlie was an inspiration to me personally, where he'd created 90+ jobs here in Providence. And I saw that there was a real opportunity for us to be able to bring other people along in Charlie's footsteps.
Now, is this more to help the companies, to help the students? How do you look at that?
Well, we think it's a win-win-win, with a third win being the regions that the companies are based in. So if you look at a company like Andera here in Providence, they're prospering, but they always need an influx of recent talented graduates to help fuel their growth. On the other hand of the equation, you have all of these aspiring entrepreneurs who are graduating from college each year who don't know how to get started. So what we do is we match those two groups together with a hope that over time these fellows will go on to be like Charlie and start more companies in places like Providence.
Now Charlie, I know his story well. He started it in his dorm room at Brown. He started in Andera, he built it up from there. Why have this sort of middle step for these would-be entrepreneurs who just get out of college?
Well, you know, Charlie is a remarkable entrepreneur, and he's a bit of an outlier in the sense that most seniors in college aren't up to creating a 100-person firm. And I put myself in this category. I graduated from Brown in '96, and it took me a number of years to start my first company, and I saw firsthand how difficult it was. So we think that there's a necessary intermediate step for these recent graduates who are aspiring to be like Charlie to get some seasoning, get some exposure, get some industry experience.
And why put them at smaller firms as opposed to big global firms? Put them at Apple, put them at Facebook, places like that.
Well, the way that growth companies function is distinct to companies that are in that particular stage of growth. If they went to an Apple is a very mature, well-established companies with built-up processes. So if you were to put a graduate as the 10,001st employee at one of these companies, they would learn how a large organization functions. Whereas if you put them at a growing firm like Andera or Swipely or Mofuse, excuse me, then they'll learn how a growing company builds itself up and creates value from the ground up.
So it's to see firsthand the challenges and what works and what doesn't when you're really in that early stage of growth.
And it's also a degree of personal mentorship, because there's nothing like spending a number of years around an experienced entrepreneur. I did it myself. After I started my first company, which did not work out, I then ended up apprenticing and being the VP to an existing entrepreneur and maturing that way. So I believe in the direct impact that mentorship can have on.
Do you think you would have benefited with your first firm if you'd had that experience first?
Oh, very, very much so. I mean, I went to law school after I graduated from Brown, which didn't turn out to be the right step for me, since I practiced law very briefly before starting the first company. So I think that a lot of people that are involved with Venture for America see it as the program that they wish existed when they graduated from school.
Now let's talk nuts and bolts. How many students are here? How many applications did you get? How did you pick them? Who are they?
Oh, well, we got hundreds of applicants from all over the country, from national universities. I personally visited 35 universities last year to make the pitch and recruit graduating seniors who were interested in learning how to build businesses and creating opportunities. So hundreds of applicants, and there was a multi-stage selection process that involved online submissions, phone interviews, and then an in-person selection day in New York City. And after the selection days, we would make offers to successful candidates. And I'm happy to say virtually everyone we extended an offer to accepted and joined the program.
And right now they're finishing up this week at Brown and elsewhere in Rhode Island a boot camp for entrepreneurs, a training camp. What is that? What are they hearing? What are they doing?
Well, we know that many startups don't have very rigorous established training programs because they're new, they're just getting started. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to give these up-and-coming entrepreneurs and fellows a chance to be able to develop professionally from day one. So we had McKinsey, IDEO, a professor from Harvard Business School, a professor from Brown, and a number of established entrepreneurs and venture capitalists come try and teach the fellows how successful businesses get started and how they succeed.
And next up, they fan out to companies. I think you told me before the show 4 are going to be based here in Providence. What are the other cities?
The other cities are Detroit, New Orleans, Cincinnati, and Las Vegas.
Interesting company that we're in there. And they did they get paid while they're working there over time? How does that work?
Sure. The companies have a genuine business need to be able to take these fellows on. These are not interns. These are early stage hires and employees.
That's an important point. They'll have real roles, real jobs. They're not just doing make work when they get there.
Oh yeah. The company is paying a full salary, though discounted to what many of these graduates could command on the market. But they're getting paid a salary for these 2 years by the company, and the company has a chance to interview them and vet them during the selection process.
And they spend 2 years doing it. What happens at the other end?
Well, the goal is that at the end of 2 years, our fellows will have a really solid sense as to how businesses are developed and built. And then there are a number of things that could happen. At this point, they're probably already quite experienced in their companies and ready to assume more responsibility. So it could be that they become managers or executives at the companies that they're placed at, which would be a great win because all of these companies need continuing development of their talent rosters. They could also start their own company, and at this stage they have a little bit more experience, they have some relationships and a network within the cities, access to some capital. Venture for America has actually pledged $100,000 in seed funding to the first class for those fellows who do go on and start a business.
All right, we have to take a break. When we come back, we're going to hear what Andrew heard from Barack Obama at the White House. Stay with us. You're watching Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi. Our guest this week is Andrew Yang. He's a businessman, entrepreneur, and now the founder of the nonprofit Venture for America, which is launching in Providence and other cities this summer. I want to hear a little about your own story, Andrew. I know you went to Brown. Where'd you grow up? What did you do at Brown? And you mentioned some of it. What did you do after?
Well, I grew up in a suburb of New York City, went to Brown, graduated in '96, and didn't know what I wanted to do after I graduated. So I did what many people did if they weren't sure, which was go to law school. So I went to law school in New York at Columbia and then practiced law very briefly and realized that I wasn't a very good fit for the work or vice versa. And so I left then to start a business when I was 25. That business ended up raising hundreds of thousands of dollars and having a rise but then eventually fall when the dot-com bubble burst. But I'd been bitten by the bug at that point, and so I knew that I wanted to get better at developing businesses. So I became an executive.
What was it? What appealed to you? What drives you to be an entrepreneur?
You know, it's the prospect of being able to create value, of being able to build something. It's like the same sort of progress you get if you were to, build a structure or a puzzle or model. But in this case, it's a company or business where you do work one day, you come back the next day, and the work you did is still there, and you can build on it. I just really enjoy that process.
Now, you eventually founded the test prep company Manhattan GMAT, which was for graduates, for people who want to go to, or is it medical school for GMAT?
No, it's for business school.
It's for business school, sorry. I show my my lack of a master's myself, which Kaplan acquired, which is part of the Washington Post company, which, what was the process like of building up a company like that?
Well, the Manhattan GMAT was actually founded by a friend of mine, and then I assumed the CEO role in 2006. And building that company was a fantastic experience. Certainly, I had many great teammates, and that's one of the things I learned is that if you're building a company, it's certainly not a one-man show, that you need a team of very talented people around you to help it develop.
And you've gotten a lot of attention already. When I was preparing for this show, I found no lack of articles, Wall Street Journal articles, other people writing about Venture for America, the idea behind it. I also I think you said part of your success stemmed from a skill you learned waiting tables in a Chinese restaurant.
Well, I think I had some advantages in that my English was better than they'd expected in that particular Chinese restaurant. But it was just if you smile, your tips go up. You find
that works even if you're trying to get tips for a nonprofit?
Yeah, I dare say it does.
In a sense. So among the people who have noticed you, President Obama. I think we have a picture there that I can show you when you went there. When did you go to the White House? How did you get on his radar screen? What was it like?
Well, I was named a champion of change by the White House for my work with Venture for America last year, and then they invited some of us to meet with the president in the spring, in April of this year. And so, I had a chance to sit down with the president and
there you are talking to him here, yeah.
Yeah, and he asked them the same questions you're asking about Venture for America. He was very interested in what we're doing, particularly because the creation of jobs and new opportunities is so central to what the country is facing right now.
And was it cool to be at the White House?
Oh, yeah, it was great. The Secret Service agents, it felt like a movie set.
Now, let me ask you, one of the big knocks on Teach for America, you hear, is that you bring in a lot of elite, high, brilliant students or graduates at that point. They come into these underprivileged schools in that case, or these startups. They're there for 2 years and then they go. What do you think of that critique of Teach for America, and then how does it apply to Venture for America? These people will come in for 2 years and then go back to New York or something. Do you really think it'll benefit the regions?
I do, and the reason I do is because I can say that entrepreneurship is somewhat addictive, and I think that in a good way. And I think that many of these aspiring entrepreneurs very badly want to be able to walk that path, and that's why we think that Venture for America is going to put them in position to have a sustainable long-term career. There's been a study that showed that entrepreneurs are more likely to be successful in areas that they're highly networked in, and so we have 2 years to get them embedded in the community, get them to become a vital part of the network here in Providence, such that if they start a company, this will be the natural place to do it.
And you alluded earlier, one more time, the 4 companies you'll be putting the Providence students in.
Sure. It's Andera, MoFuse, Swipely, and a new company called Teespring.
That's the one I haven't heard of. Yeah. What are they working on?
Teespring is a fantastic new company that helps nonprofits raise money, so it's near dear to my heart. But they help nonprofits raise money through T-shirt campaigns, where if you had a cause that you'd like to support, what you do is you tell all your friends and family, hey, here's a cool T-shirt that supports my nonprofit, and then if they all say yes, I want to buy that T-shirt, then the company prints them and sends them to all of the individuals with really minimal trouble on your part. So our fellows actually used Teespring in a competition we held for them, one of the challenges. And they ended up selling about $20,000 worth of T-shirts and raised $5,500 directly for nonprofits. So It just goes to show the potential of the platform, Teespring.
Now, I think you were a class of '96 at Brown?
Yeah, that's right.
So you were here through '96. You went to New York. You went off. You did your thing, and now you're back working on this. What's the sense you get of the business sector, the entrepreneurial sector in Providence from being here for a couple weeks now, working on the boot camp?
I'm friends with many of the entrepreneurs that are here in the city, and they love it here. They think it's a fantastic environment. The issue that I think they've raised to me, and the issue that I'm here to help address, is really the talent issue. And this is something that I can relate to directly. Now, if you're running a company, there are obviously very important issues around tax and the infrastructure and the environment, but the single biggest ingredient is the people. And so if you can get the right people into your company, then the sky's the limit. And if you struggle to enlist those people, then that's when you start thinking about the region you're located in.
More broadly, we always talking on this show now about what we can do. We have the second highest unemployment rate in the country in Rhode Island right now. If the governor or whoever ends up leading the Economic Development Corporation asked you for advice, what would you say to focus on from your own experience?
I think Providence has a ton of natural advantages, and that it's a very livable city. It's a great size. The cost of living is reasonable. I would tell the governor to focus on the talent issues, where you have a number of world-class educational institutions here in Rhode Island throwing off droves of talented people that are very creative and have the capacity to generate a lot of value, potentially give rise to new companies and even new industries. And those people often are interacting with Rhode Island the same way I did in the 90s, where I was here for 4 years and then I left and I went to New York, and I'm only really back now. That I would tell the governor, look, you have so many talented people passing through your state that the more you can get them to see Rhode Island as a place to build a career, the better off the state will be.
Fantastic. All right, well, we have to take another break. I want to thank our guests for the first half, Andrew Yang, for being here. Coming up, the Providence College professor who raised a red flag about the LIBOR scandal. We'll talk about what that acronym stands for and more. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi. Our guest for the second half is Michael Kraten, accounting professor at Providence College and suddenly a celebrity in the financial journalism market thanks to the LIBOR scandal. Now, LIBOR stands for London, let me get it right, Interbank Offering Rate, is that right?
That's exactly right.
And that is a rate, I'm going to let you explain it. Explain what the LIBOR scandal is in the simplest terms you can and why a viewer at home who thinks this sounds arcane might care.
There are 15 to 20 global banks. Those are the banks around the world that are so-called too big to fail. They all have offices in London. Every once in a while, one of their London offices or branches runs a little bit short of money. So they walk across the street or pick up the phone, call their friends, their colleague banks who are also in the same community in the financial district of London, and they say, please lend me a few British pounds. The bank that is doing the lending to tide the other bank over will charge something of an interest rate. And the LIBOR rate is the daily estimation for what, on average, each of those banks are lending each other money at for those lending transactions that are occurring in the City of London.
And that, to help people, I remember as a financial reporter during the crisis in the fall of 2008, every morning everyone looked at the LIBOR rates because that was sort of, as you watched it spike, that was a sign of the fear that the banks weren't even trusting each other at the time. So LIBOR is very important, and a lot of other financial instruments base their rates off LIBOR, correct?
That's right.
So tell me about what happened with Barclays in London that's now getting all this attention.
Well, what happens is that, as with any borrower, if you are concerned as a bank that a borrower is about to go bankrupt, then you will increase the interest rate that you charge them. And therefore, back in the financial crisis time, everyone was looking at the LIBOR rate to see which bank might be concerned that it might be going belly up.
Sure, Lehman getting charged a terrible rate or something.
Exactly. And therefore, everyone paid attention to those rates at that time. Now, the banks themselves in London got together decades ago, more than 20 years ago, and said it might be helpful for us if we told the world the rates at which we were lending each other money. And therefore they created this policy or practice where they reached out to their own trade association called the British Bankers Association, located in the City of London. And every day the British Bankers Association, which is the trade association for the banks themselves, calls each of the 15 to 20 banks, which are global banks in the city. And they essentially ask each bank the question, if you needed to borrow money from another bank in London today, whether you are actually borrowing money or not, what do you think you would need to pay for an interest rate?
And now Barclays has admitted they fudged the rate. Is that a fair way to put it in layman's terms?
Well, I would say that they provided a rate that was not necessarily equal to the rate that they thought they would pay, but was rather a rate that was equal to something that would help them make more money.
And to give people, and that then sends off a cascade. It changes the LIBOR rate that's reported. It changes all those financial instruments. That could include mortgages or financial instruments that nonprofits have. Right here in Rhode Island, I know some of them have LIBOR-based things. Now, part of why I have you on with me to talk about this is you wrote a paper long before we knew anything about Barclays with some colleagues. What did you find in the paper?
Back in 2008, I got together with 3 colleagues, and we said, you know, something very interesting is happening. Every time the British Bankers Association is issuing their daily rate, they don't just announce the rate itself, they announce the estimates that each of the 15 to 20 banks are providing them, the estimates that they use to calculate the rate. And as a result, it may not only be sufficiently interesting to look at the rate itself, but if you look at how each bank's quoted rate or estimate is changing over time, you can learn over a period of time how the bank's fortunes are changing. And so we started to look at each bank's individual quotes from day to day, week to week, month to month. And it was what we didn't notice that was as interesting as what we did notice.
How so?
Well, you would expect that on a daily basis, since banks' financial positions change day to day, minute to minute, second to second sometimes, that the interest rate that each bank would borrow money at would normally change. However, there were certain banks which for extended periods of time claimed that the borrowing rate that they were quoting would not change at all.
And what did you think when you noticed that?
That's odd, because by definition, the reason why LIBOR is quoted daily is because you would expect to see daily changes. And then there were other times when the quoted rates that certain banks would offer would suddenly change by a dramatic amount. And then sometimes we were able to look back in the newspapers and try to figure out what was happening on a certain day when a particular bank's trends of quotes would suddenly change. And we would say, well, that's interesting. There was a bit of news that hit the newspapers on that day that actually affected the banks. And on that very same day, certain banks would change their rate quotes after not having changed them at all for an unusually extended period of time.
So that makes you think it just didn't seem like it was really moving the way it would be in a natural market.
Exactly.
So, you know, what do you make? Were you surprised when you heard about when it came about that Barclays had admitted this and was paying a fine, or were you not surprised because of what you'd seen? We
were not surprised because of what we saw. Now, what was surprising to me personally is that we first wrote our initial paper in 2008. We did it 4 years ago in August 2008. We posted it online onto the Social Science Research Network, which is a global online network of academics who look at each other's work. From 2008 to 2010, we shared our information in unfinished form. In 2010, I went ahead, with the permission of my co-authors, and had the paper peer-reviewed and then presented by me at a national conference of the American Accounting Association, trying to raise the visibility of what we had found. And we had some success.
Did regulators speak with you after that?
No, not at all.
You never heard from regulators?
Other academics did. No regulatory feedback and no feedback from the banks themselves.
Was that surprising?
I was somewhat surprised and a bit disappointed by that. On the other hand, though, if you are engaged, in a system of regulating rates that perhaps are being manipulated or managed, then it may not be necessarily surprising.
Though, of course, theoretically, the Fed should be watching that and should be concerned they exist as a regulator as opposed to a bank.
And very interestingly, late last week, we found out for the first time that Timothy Geithner, our regulator in the United States, issued a private memorandum to his counterpart, a regulator in the UK, in the United Kingdom, back in 2008.
Very little limited time left.
Exactly. Okay. Issued a memo at the same time that we were first posting our paper, raising very similar questions. So they were not followed up with.
The Dick Tracy of LIBOR here with us today from Providence College. I want to thank our guest, Michael Kraten. Our guest on the first half was Andrew Yang of Venture for America. If you missed it, catch it on our website. Thanks for watching Executive Suite. See you next week.